It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
Will he, won't he, will he, won't he, will he join the dance? That's the big question this evening. Will Donald Trump take the United States of America into another bigger and definitely longer-lasting Middle East war in complete defiance of his mandate, his mantra during the election campaign, indeed his mantra over the last 10 years, splitting MAGA down the middle. And tonight Trump insulted President Vladimir Putin, patted him on the head when he offered to mediate between Israel and Iran. Trump said, let's mediate Russia first. You can worry about Iran later. Well, we're all worried about Iran, whether we like Iran or not. We're not that keen on being dragged into World War III, Donald. Thank you very much. The slaughter in Gaza continues, and 55 innocent civilians were killed by a tank shell today in the Gaza Strip, as of course they queued for food in the midst of a biblical famine. And 7.22 million people watched the mother of all talk shows in the last 7 days, and still rising. But hey, Piers Morgan's dad is bigger than my dad. It is the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
7.22 million of you, thank you for that record, easily breaking our earliest record of 5 million just once for the mother of all talk shows, indeed beating it by more than 40%. And that, of course, doesn't include tonight's show, with two of the best and the biggest guests we could possibly wish for. So let's get on with the show. Will Donald Trump take America into war in the Middle East again? a forever war against which he railed from the moment of his emergence as a putative Republican presidential candidate exactly 10 years ago. He came down that golden escalator, having defeated the other dwarves in the Republican primary, primarily on the basis that they had all supported the disastrous war on Iraq. How he lampooned and lacerated them for bleeding America's young men and its treasure into the desert sands for nothing. Indeed, as recently as last November, Donald Trump was telling voters in the very narrowly contested and swing state of Michigan that he was the peace president. He was going to bring America's wars to an end. He was going to put America first. He was going to make America great again. But something has happened to Donald Trump. In the space of just days, he publicly, politically executed 3 of his best supporters, some of whom had put hundreds of millions of dollars into his election campaign. Others of whom had driven hundreds of millions of people in his direction through his vast audiences on his television shows, and one of whom was so glittering a princess to Donald, he made her the Director of National Intelligence. Elon Musk was slandered, as it turned out, as ketamine-fueled, as drug-addled, drug-addicted. Although Elon Musk has now produced his health records from SpaceX, which show that he has passed with flying colours every single drug test, including random drug tests, that he has ever entered into. And poor cookie Tucker Carlson, having done so much for Donald Trump's re-election, was doomed as some kind of crank without even a television station to his name. As for Tulsigabbard, her public march protestation on behalf of 17 American intelligence agencies, including the CIA, that there was no evidence that Iran was seeking to build a nuclear bomb. When this was put to Trump 48 hours ago, he said, "I don't care what she thinks." He doesn't care what his Director of National Intelligence thinks. It is exactly a replica, right down to the same tropes. I'm just waiting for little Marco Rubio to turn out at the Security Council holding a glass vial, holding a test tube, and telling us Iran's weapons of mass destruction are in this glass. I was thinking just the other day of the night that George Robertson, Lord Robertson, former head of NATO, former war minister in Tony Blair's war cabinet, answering me in a debate, he held up a glass of water half full and said that this amount of the weapons that Iraq has in its possession, hidden under presidential palaces, that's actually what he said, this amount of Iraq's weapons could destroy the entire city of Paris. The truth is, of course, if Iran did have weapons of mass destruction, they wouldn't be attacking it, for the same reason that nobody will ever attack Pyongyang. Iran is being attacked precisely because it does not have weapons of mass destruction. Otherwise, Lindsey Graham, Miss Lindsey, loves a man in uniform, especially with their boots on the ground, if you get my drift. He's determined to have an American invasion of Iran, although, like Tedcruz, he evidently has no idea what size Iran is and just how numerous is their manhood. Lindsey Graham seems to be running Donald Trump now, him and Benjamin Netanyahu. There are some grounds for hope in the fact that the National Security Council met last evening with great fanfare going in, but with complete silence coming out. Trump was supposed to give a televised address after the council, but cancelled it. And today is striking a slightly different note than he was on the plane talking to Netanyahu, no doubt, via text, via Pegasus. He was writing like Tony Soprano probably wrote his texts, if he ever wrote them. He was actually threatening in gangster language to kill a very old man in his 80s, the Grand Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Yes, that's right. The President of the United States said, "We know where you live. We're not going to take you out, brackets, kill, exclamation mark, close brackets, at least not yet." It's almost impossible to believe that a President of the United States of America wrote those words, but write them he did. And he's been insulting and belligerently provoking, poking in the eye everybody in the last 72 hours. But the most significant of those people was the person he insulted this afternoon. When President Vladimir Putin, in a last-ditch effort to avoid what may very well be a cataclysmic, all-out regional war, he patted him on the head and said, "Vladimir, I'll mediate Russia first. I'll mediate Russia first. You can worry about Iran later." Putting Putin back in his box, he no doubt hoped and maybe thought. But the opposite is true. The supplies arriving at Tehran's military airport from both Russia and China have dramatically speeded up, and the number of flights coming in can no longer easily be charted. Significant and sophisticated weapons of war and materiel are now arriving from Iran's best friends and chief allies in the BRICS organization, Russia and China. China in particular has everything to lose from any regime change war, whatever way it goes. If the Iranian oil supply to Iran were to fail, there would be critical difficulties in the Chinese economy. If the Straits of Hormuz were to be blocked, there would be critical difficulties in every economy in the world, particularly in Europe. All the more remarkable then that the European pygmies who pose as the leaders of our countries are not just egging Donald Trump on to get involved in Netanyahu's war to save his own skin, but in the case of the British, of course, the tail of the American dog, we are getting ready to join in. A Cobra meeting, a British intelligence roundtable, committee room 14, cabinet office briefing room 14, but Cobra sounds all the more deadly, don't you think, is taking place right now. And so, having spent the last 20 months doing everything possible to assist the Israeli government in Gaza, in the slaughter of the innocents, Keir Starmer is about to join another war. He's already in one in Ukraine. He's been in one for 20 months over Gaza, and now he's getting ready to take Britain into yet another Middle East war. Perhaps it's Tony's revenge, so far as he's concerned. So let's spend a few minutes looking at what is happening right now and what might happen in the next 24, 48 hours. And if we're all still alive, I'll be back here on Sunday to review the efficacy of what I'm about to say. But I feel quite confident about it. In the sky right now, heading for Tel Aviv, or maybe Jerusalem, or maybe Haifa, or maybe an air base, or maybe Dimona, the nuclear industry powerhouse of the Israeli state, where underneath which are Israel's nuclear weapons, is the very first use of a hypersonic Iranian missile. That's right, hypersonic, like the Orishnik. In fact, its trajectory looks dazzlingly like the Orishnik, the Russian super weapon that obliterates everything that it hits and cannot possibly, literally, scientifically, cannot possibly be stopped. It's called the Khorram Shah missile, and it's in the air. There it is on your screen now. And it will land, I predict, to devastating effect. The only question is, what exactly is it headed for? If it's headed for Israel's nuclear weapons, then we've got an all-round international global crisis, because the emissions from the shattering of Israel's perhaps 300 nuclear weapon fleet would be very considerable indeed. Talk about nuclear proliferation. But I have no idea where it's headed. I just know that it's in the air. The second point that needs to be made is that 30 ballistic missiles hit Israel last night. The fact that that is news to many, maybe most of you, is because it is now a serious crime for anyone, whether a tourist, a foreign journalist, broadcaster, or Israeli citizen, to publish any pictures or footage of these Iranian missiles arriving. Piersmorgan thinks there's only 2 have managed to get through. Well, if that were true, they'd be showing it every minute on the television. The fact that it's a crime to show the skyline of Israel demonstrates, I think, beyond contradiction, my contention that hundreds of Iranian ballistic missiles are raining down on Tel Aviv, to the point that the mayor of Tel Aviv, a former intelligence chief in the Israeli military, said, we cannot go on with this war. We must get out of this war. And the Israeli finance minister said, we can't afford to continue this war. Our economy is falling off a cliff. So if Donald Trump doesn't join in, Israel will have had a bloody good hiding and will have to come to terms with the new regional balance of power and force in the region. So we're back to the question of whether Trump will join in. Let's assume for a minute that tonight, tomorrow, the next day, or over the weekend, the United States Armed Forces, which are now in the Persian Gulf in profusion, both naval and air assets, most of the air assets in the nearby potentates, the satrapies of Qatar and Saudi Arabia, but there are other culprits. They're all now parked with fleets of American warplanes, bombers. And the B-2 bomber is in the air over Israel this afternoon. A so-called stealth bomber, but I definitely managed to see it. In fact, I took a screenshot of it. I'm sure the Iranians already have it. The B-2 and the F-35s, dozens of them, are now parked at the Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. And there's not much doubt what they will be used for if Trump gives the green light. They'll be used to drop MOATS, the mother of all bombs, massive ordnance bombs. The one that we've seen in action before destroyed a mountain in Afghanistan and was used for no other reason, certainly didn't stop the Taliban, than to chill the blood of everyone else. The largest non-nuclear bomb ever detonated. And it definitely destroyed the mountain. The question is, did it destroy what was underneath the mountain? And if it destroys the mountains, plural, under which Iran's nuclear assets, civil, peaceful nuclear assets, According to the IAEA and according to tulsigabbard, these assets are deeply underneath mountains. So will one Moab be enough? Or will many Moabs have to be dropped? And if they are, will they in the end succeed? And what will Iran be doing while the Moabs are dropping on it? Well, here I think Trump, perhaps not his fault, his only knowledge of the Arab world is collecting gold and diamonds there. He doesn't know anything about Persia. He knows nothing about Iran. He knows nothing about the ancient civilization, many, many thousands of years older than the country of which he is the president. And he definitely doesn't know their attitude to death. You see, when he threatened the octogenarian leader of Iran that he was not going to kill him, brackets, not yet at least, he imagined that that would make the Ayatollah frightened. Well, anybody who knows anything at all about Shia Islam in particular knows that martyrdom is what they live for. The entire schism in the religion is based upon the reverence for the glorification of the martyrdom of Hussein. This idea that you're going to frighten an Iranian with threatening him with death shows that Trump is an ignorant New Jersey casino-owning mobster. If he imagines that the Iranian regime is going to go quietly into that good night while he's Moabbing them, he is an idiot. Here's what they'll do. They will immediately destroy every American base in West Asia. And if that happens to bring down the monarchies that gave the gold and diamonds to Donald Trump, well, that'll be a bonus so far as the Iranians are concerned. There will be no more oil pumped from Kuwait, from Saudi Arabia, from the United Arab Emirates, or from Qatar. Not for many years until those oil fields stop being on fire and can possibly be repaired. If you've got a tall building in Dubai, you better check your insurance covers war damage. And they'll close the Straits of Hormuz, through which 40% of the entire world's oil supply sails through on a daily basis. That won't trouble America, by the way, because they've got plenty of oil. But it's sure going to bring the European economies to their knees, as if they weren't already on their knees. But it's going to make their leaders squeal, and not with delight. Coming up is only the world's best journalist, Glenn Greenwald. See you in a minute. Stay tuned. I don't believe that the mainland European countries give a toss about Britain, and I'm certain that the United States would not sacrifice itself for Britain. That's why I say Britain is completely marginalized. As for the Trident missiles, of course, if the United States, which has dual control over these missiles, gave permission for them to be launched, of course, they would incinerate Russian cities. But what good would that do us? Because we'd all be dead, including the people that fired the missiles. You feel me?
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Here's the poll for this evening. Who's winning, Israel or Iran? You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, and on the YouTube stream. If you're watching on the YouTube stream, please like the show, subscribe to the channel, and share with all of your colleagues. If you want to call the show, by the way, 53,000 people have already voted in that poll, and I've only just now announcing it. You can call the show toll-free from the US and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. Free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 0808 196 5522, and the worldwide number is 0044 203 966 2625. Glenn Greenwald is the doyen of journalism, author, columnist, host of System Update, founder of The Intercept, and co-founder of Freedom of the Press. He's a great man, and I'm very honoured to welcome him for the first time, I think, onto the mother of all talk shows. Glenn, thanks for joining us. So I started by saying, will he, won't he, will he, won't he, will he join the dance? Will Donald Trump join this war, as he earlier seemed to make certain that he would?
He himself today, and first of all, thank you for those very kind words, George. I was confused because I know I've talked to you before in this setting, and I realized it's because you've been on my show. So I'm happy to make my debut appearance on yours. Hope it won't be the last. You know, as Trump himself said this morning, and I think he's right, nobody knows what he's going to do. He's saying, you know, I could join the war. I couldn't join the war. At this point, if I were a betting man and I were forced to speculate, my guess is that all signals that have been sent in terms of Trump's rhetoric, in terms of his posture, in terms of the actions of the U.S. government and other people who are close to Trump and what they're telling me, it seems very likely, very, very likely, that he intends to have the U.S. military join with the Israelis in some form to attack Iran. I think Trump is displaying this very disturbing hubris, almost like an intoxication, where he's inebriated from the power he feels about how he can single-handedly destroy or kill. A lot of deranged comments coming from him that suggest that he very much is kind of connected to and being motivated by and almost excited and aroused by his capacity to wage war and destroy and the power that's in his hands to do that. So it looks as though, if I had to bet, that it's more likely than not that the U.S. military will become more involved, directly involved, visibly involved than it already is.
It makes you pine for a return of the auto pen, almost, because if this is human control of events, then the sword is being wielded by rather unstable individuals. Some of the language that he's using on Truth Social is, as you say, unhinged, deranged. Is there anyone, any grown-ups in the cabinet room or amongst the top brass who can take his phone away and take his finger off the trigger?
I think, you know, a lot of people, I think you might have been one of them, I certainly was, understood that one of the reasons to be potentially optimistic about the election of Trump as opposed to Kamala Harris, given that those were the only two choices, is that Trump really did have this potential to be what Seymour Hersh called a circuit breaker, somebody who would actually come in and put a stop to and kind of break and crush what had been the bipartisan foreign policy dogma of imperialism and militarism that dominated Washington for so long. And we know for certain that had Joe Biden or Kamala Harris been reelected or elected in the case of Kamala Harris, there's zero chance that anything would have changed. They would have continued to be as subservient to Israel as they've always been. It's hard to imagine them standing up in any way, whereas I think Trump actually has the ability. He doesn't care about anyone really but himself and his own power. And so I think, and also there are people in his administration who are far more anti-interventionist, far more opposed to this kind of militarism than anyone that would have taken an important position in a Biden administration 2.0 or a Kamala administration as well. There are people in high levels of position and authority inside the Trump administration who are very much opposed to involving the U.S. in any way, even to the extent we've already been involved, and are counseling him and urging him not to do so. I mean, you saw Tulsi Gabbard, who he handpicked to be the director of national intelligence, go before the Senate openly and say the consensus of our analysis, of our intelligence, is that Khomeini has done nothing. The Iranians have done nothing to change the fact that they are not actively pursuing a nuclear weapon. She recorded a video a few days ago warning of the dangers of nuclear war and war between nuclear powers that seemed very much to suggest that she was concerned. You definitely have people in his orbit, more so than you would have had with Kamala, who are encouraging him to avoid this. But I think one of the things that Trump was determined to do in his second term that he rightly felt didn't happen in the first term was to make sure that he alone made decisions, that he wasn't surrounded by people who were sabotaging him or trying undemocratically to subvert what he was wanting to do. And unfortunately, that is how they built this administration, with absolute, complete loyalty being the sole real requirement. Everyone knows that that's what they have to do. And that's what concerns me, is that Trump is pretty much alone to make whatever decision he wants, and whether he's watching Fox News and hears something, or talks to Netanyahu or Marco Rubio and gets convinced by something, that's what's going to happen. And that's why it's hard to predict and also pretty alarming.
Well, Oscar Wilde described someone once as bearing the impression, like a sofa, of the last person to sit on them. And one gets the impression that on Air Force One, just coming back from Europe overnight, he was definitely on the phone to the wrong kind of people. We'll come back to the war in a minute, but it's definitely splitting the MAGA ranks. I'm following avidly the school of thought of the likes of Steve Bannon and the likes of Tucker Carlson, the doyen of broadcast journalism, who was summarily executed, so to speak, by Donald Trump in the most cutting possible way just the other day, despite everything that Carlson had done for him. So if he's not listening to them, and he is listening to the wrong people, I think we've reason to be pessimistic, as both you and I seem to be.
Yeah, the fact that he turned around and publicly mocked Tucker Carlson, not only mocked him, but tried to humiliate him by saying he's not even on television, which is ironic since Trump himself said the mainstream media is dead, that podcasting and alternative media and independent media is where things are happening. That's a major part of his campaign strategy. But now he seems to be saying, if you're not appearing in my television screen on cable news, you don't really have a relevant voice. That is deeply concerning, because I know Tucker and Trump have a very close personal relationship. Tucker has been nothing but publicly effusive about Trump's character, about supporting Trump. He campaigned for Trump. He gave speeches for Trump. So I think what Trump was doing there was, number one, showing how invested he is in the idea of involving the U.S. in this war, that he became so angry instantaneously at Tucker for questioning it that he was willing to humiliate one of his closest and most important supporters. But also he was sending a signal, more importantly, to all the other influencers and podcasters and activists to rely upon good standing in MAGA or access to the White House, that the minute you question me, you will be summarily dismissed. If I can do this with Tucker Carlson, as I just did, think of what I can do to you. And that is this kind of very closed, authoritarian, dissent-free bubble that Trump seems to be determined to create around himself. And I'll tell you, George, what really bothered me and disturbs me the most is that email, that text that Mike Huckabee, who, as you know, is a adherent to end times, messianic Christianity. It's so ironic that they're constantly saying we have to be worried about Iran because they believe in a messianic form of Islam, when there is no more messianic foreign policy at this moment in the United States, because of people like Mike Huckabee, who believe that defending the Israeli government is the prerequisite to having Jesus return to earth and consign all non-believers, including pretty much every Jew, to hell. That's a major part of U.S. influence and support for the U.S. And Mike Huckabee was basically telling Trump, the reason God spared you in Butler, Pennsylvania, and the reason God chose you for this moment is because he wants you to be as consequential a figure as Harry Truman was in 1945. And of course, the only thing that Harry Truman did in 1945 that made him so consequential was the unleashing of 2 nuclear bombs on Japan, combined with the demand of unconditional surrender. And not only did Trump go and post that text as though he believes in it and is inspired by it and moved by it, right immediately after is when he started demanding, quote unquote, unconditional render from the Iranians. So if that's the mindset in which he's currently operating, and it seems to be that he is, I can't think of anything more alarming than that. I guess the only word of optimism I'd offer is that Trump likes to troll, even in these kind of situations, likes to provoke, likes to make people think he's going to do something, and then likes to do something else. So again, he's very hard to predict, but all the signs, I think, are disturbing.
In that case, maybe I'm, as George Bush might put it, misunderestimating what's about to happen. I predicted a Moab, but maybe we should be thinking about the potential of a tactical nuclear strike on the mountains that under which the Iranian nuclear facilities are based. Is it conceivable that Donald Trump could nuke Iran?
You know, I don't want to be too alarmist on the one hand, but on the other, when you're dealing with a situation this grave, this serious, this consequential for the planet, for the humanity, I think it's irresponsible not to pay attention to the worst case scenario, especially when the person in charge is clearly flirting with and trifling with that on purpose. I mean, one of the things, remember, that he did was after Israel suggested that everybody who lives in Tehran should evacuate, Trump went on to True Social at 2 a.m. Baghdad, Tehran time, and said that everyone who lives in Tehran should immediately evacuate. That's 15 million people at 2 a.m. trying to stir this panic. Now, if this war is about destroying Iran's nuclear capabilities and nuclear facilities, why would they need to evacuate Tehran when there are no nuclear facilities in Tehran? We all know where they are, at least mostly where they are, and they're outside of Tehran, in the mountains in central Iran, some in the east, some in a couple in the west. So that was at least designed to, let's say, put it as generously and optimistically as possible, induce panic in the brains and minds and hearts of 16 million Iranian people. And when you have Trump posting something like, you have the chance to be as consequential as what Harry Truman did, and I guarantee you there are people around him telling you this is your this is your Churchill moment. You have to decide if you're Churchill or Chamberlain. I know in the UK, unfortunately, that's what contaminated the U.S. with this pathology. That's the only thing through which everything is understood. Are you Churchill, meaning are you for whatever latest war we're telling you? Or are you Chamberlain, meaning the coward that's too afraid to send other people to wars? That's the way that neocons have created U.S. discourse. And they're trying to tell Trump, this is your moment to be Churchill. And of course, the way that war ended again was through the use of nuclear weapons, which Trump is openly discussing. So I'm not ready to say that Trump is going to do that, is actively contemplating it. But when you think about Trump's personality and the thing that he hates most, which is appearing to be weak or humiliated, and you have the Ayatollahs scoffing at him, as you just pointed out, saying, I don't care about your threats to kill me. That's not going to change my mind. That is the sort of thing that can psychologically affect Trump, that can make him subject to the manipulation of others. And the kind of worst case scenario, which isn't just dropping the MOAB on a nuclear facility where very few people live, but dropping a worse weapon still in a densely populated area, at least becomes a possibility.
As you're talking there, my mind was flashing back to, I thought, the rather overblown movie, The Apprentice, Ali Abbasi's movie, about the early Donald Trump and the sinister figure of Roy Cohn, possibly the most serpent-like human being that ever walked in the United States. And I'm thinking that Trump is kind of morphing into Roy Cohn.
Well, Roy Cohn was a hero and a father figure to Donald Trump, as you all know, not just from that film, but from basic history. He really admired Roy Cohn and everything he talks about, you know, the way he speaks about people with admiration only if they're strong and tough. What he means by strong and tough is the kind of Machiavellian, amoral, you know, sort of limitless will to power that Roy Cohn believed he embodied, that a lot of people were very intimidated by Roy Cohn, were afraid of him, and that's what he very much cultivated. That's clearly what Trump has always sought to portray as well. I mean, he talks about Xi, even talks about Maduro, with a certain Putin, with a certain kind of admiration because of how strong they are, meaning they'll do anything to remain in power in his mind. That to him is the highest value, and that's what he wants to embody, and that's what makes the situation so dangerous. And I, would point out as well that although I'm not necessarily opposed to having people in their late 70s and 80s in high positions of government power, I do think that one of the risks is that people do start to change how they think about life and the world as they get closer to the time when human beings generally die. And that means caring a lot more about what your legacy is or how history will think about you, and a lot less about the effects for everybody else who has to live on the planet once you're gone. And I think Trump is entering that phase as well. And that too is very alarming.
Now, there's a pin drop silence from the top Democrats, but there does seem to be a bit of a congressional revolt going on. Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey have introduced a bipartisan bill into the House which asserts the plain constitutional truth that President Trump does not have the power to make this war. There is no imminent threat to the United States from Iran. It would be a grossly unconstitutional act simply by fiat to do any of the things you and I have just been discussing. Does that motion have any chance of passing? Indeed, are there enough Republicans that would be ready to side with enough Democrats to pass this?
I really don't think so. I believe me, I'm looking for anything to be optimistic about as well, and that's one of the things I would love to grab on. You know, you're the last person I need to recount the history of the Iraq War to, but for people who weren't young enough, who were not old enough to have lived through it or forgot, in 2002, George Bush and Dick Cheney took the position that we're allowed to invade Iraq, a ground invasion on the other side of the world without getting congressional approval for whatever reason. And Congress is basically left begging, please, just let us vote, let us weigh in, let us have a vote. And it was only once the Congress basically guaranteed that they were going to vote in favor of the war, and they basically told Bush, look, your war will be stronger if we get to vote for it and show everybody that it's not just you, but us as well, including Democrats behind it. They kind of gave permission to vote. Okay, you can vote on this as long as you guarantee that the vote is going to be yes. And of course, overwhelmingly by a bipartisan majority, it was yes. So what is happening now is, you have senior Democrats. Chuck Schumer, 3 weeks ago, the senior Democrat in Washington, a longtime loyalist of Israel, was mocking Trump as being too soft for trying to negotiate with Iran, was mocking him for being a quote-unquote chicken for trying to arrange a diplomatic resolution to deal with the Iranians, daring him to go to war. And since this war started, Schumer has made clear he's on the side of Israel as always. Same with Hakeem Jeffries, the senior Democrat in the House. Is it possible that a procedural vote might be supported where Congress says we should vote on this if we're really going to go to war with Iran? I don't think so, but maybe. But the only way that would happen is if AIPAC and Israel are assured in advance that that vote is going to go in their favor. So even if that were to happen, I think it would be at most the kind of symbolic procedural step that actually ends up fortifying the U.S. attempt to go to war with Iran rather than impeding it by saying, oh, look, the people and their representatives in Congress are behind you.
At this point, it's clear, isn't it, that it's Israel first, not America first. Even with the Trumpites, who made their whole insurrectionary move against the old guard of the Republicans on that basis, putting America first. Is putting America first now very last decade, last year?
Unfortunately, putting America first or making America great again or America first, at least in the modern iteration of how Donald Trump presented it, has always had a gigantic, glaring Israel exception. I mean, Trump's first term, he boasted about how he would give his primary funders, Sheldon and Miriam Adelson, Miriam Adelson being the multi-billionaire who is Israeli, became an American citizen late in life, but served in the IDF. They only cared about Israel. Trump boasted that nobody visited him more in the White House than Sheldon and Miriam Adelson, and every time they went, they demanded more things for Israel. He not only gave them everything, but he even gave them more. He said, they didn't even ask me for the Golan Heights, and I gave Israel the Golan Heights. And during the campaign, he would give speeches in front of Miriam Adelson, who gave him $100 million, and not just her, but plenty of other pro-Israel billionaires as well, where he would give speeches and he would say, we're going to make Israel great again, and we're going to make the U.S. great again. And I think that's the reason he got so angry at Tucker Carlson and why he's become so defensive, because, of course, George, there's a gigantic, irreconcilable contradiction between saying on the one hand you want to put America first and on the other continuously pursuing policies and fighting wars that are in the interest of this foreign country and have absolutely no effect on your own citizens other than harming their economic security and even their physical security. And yet we continue to do that because the Israel lobby is stronger than ever. That is the reality, not just of the United States, but also Donald Trump. And it's hard to imagine seeing an American president, even if he wanted, refusing to go to war for Israel the minute that Israel demands it.
Glenn Greenwald, I lost the last bit of that. I hope the audience caught it. I'm sure that, like all of your words, they were pearls. Thanks very much for joining us. Glenn Greenwald, journalist, author, columnist, and importantly, host of System Update that everyone should follow on social media and watch his programs. Let me take a quick break, then it's your calls coming next. Stay tuned.
We interrupt this program to bring you a special announcement. A big thank you to all our wonderful listeners, as the Mother of All Talk Shows podcast is now one of the most listened to political podcasts in the entire world. We are the #1 English-speaking political podcast in the Middle East, and in the last year alone have charted in the top 10 in podcast land in Pakistan, Russia, and China. Like, rate, and subscribe to the MOATS podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts to be a part of the fastest rising independent news show in the world.
You are listening to the Mother of All Talk Shows with George Galloway.
One again. Well, I'm cut off from the mothership and hoping that you can hear me. Who's winning, Israel or Iran? 55,000 people now have voted, and 10% on Telegram say Israel's winning, 27% on X, 18% on the YouTube community poll, and 18% on the YouTube stream. So pretty much 3/4 or more. 3/4, let's call it that. More than 3/4 think that Iran is winning, which is remarkable, as they're refusing to allow you to see any footage of the damage being done in Israel. But most people sensibly infer that that means there must be a lot of damage. Now, Sunday's episode was the biggest this year of our podcast. We're in the top 40 in the UK, India, Norway, New Zealand, and Japan during this past week. Japan. Just think about that. You can download the MOATS podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen now. Let's take the first call. I hope I'm able to hear it. It's from Mohammed in Portugal. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Hi, Mr. George Galloway. It's nice to talk to you, sir.
Thank you. Good to hear you.
I appreciate. Can you hear me?
Very clear.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's great. So, first of all, your show, it's a great hit around the globe. A wonderful show with insightful analysis of international politics and then global relations. That's wonderful. And I literally appreciate the depth and clarity in your discussions. It's truly engaging and informative. As me being a young guy, I've been listening to you for a long time. I would like to pause on a very little comment, and then I would like to ask two important questions from you, sir. So the first comment would be, it's deeply concerning for the youth across the globe to witness leaders of powerful nations like United States of America and Israel engaging in actions that not only appear criminal but are criminal. For example, Mr. Donald Trump threatening other heads of state. He literally threatened Ayatollah Khamenei with his life, which is crime under United States Code of Law itself, and also crime under United Nations Charter. So I'm very amazed to.
Ever since the church inquiry, it has been a federal crime, a high crime, for any American official to threaten any foreign leader or politician with death.
That's very concerning for youth like us. I mean, we cannot think of criticizing their actions, whatever it is. If some head of state cannot be protected by United Nations and these institutions, then how can the youth can trust these institutions, which are being upheld by these sacred laws and contracts and whatever? So the silence of journalists and politicians and global institutions like United Nations over such kind of threats, it's very concerning for me personally as a young guy, that how can these institutions be trusted anymore? So my first question in this regard would be, is there any chance or is there any such regulation or law in the United States of America where the President Trump can be impeached, or I don't think he can be criminally charged right now, but can he be impeached by the Congress or by the Senate?
He could definitely be impeached, and if this all goes wrong, I predict to you that he will be impeached. After all, the Democrats want to impeach him already. Before he'd kicked a ball, they would have impeached him. And the Republicans are deeply split over this. So let's say this all went catastrophically wrong. Then I'd put money on his impeachment. And so, having dreams of a third presidential term, he may end up not even completing his second. But I've got to correct you on one thing, Mohammed. There's nothing sacred about these laws. These laws are artifice, by which I mean they are rules and regulations which are put in place to govern the conduct of you and me, and to govern the conduct of smaller, less powerful organizations, countries, states, but they were never intended to be obeyed by the most powerful. And they are not obeyed by the most powerful. And they are obliterated at will. And we've seen that now multiple times by the Democrats and by the Republicans, by Joe Biden and by Donald Trump. They have passed a resolution which has now gone through both houses, that if any American serviceman or politician is seized and arrested according to a warrant of the International Criminal Court, they will launch an American invasion of The Hague. I'm not making that up. That is American domestic law, that they will invade the Netherlands, in The Hague in particular, to seize any American who's ever tried for war crimes, crimes against humanity, breaches of the Geneva Convention. They have effectively destroyed the International Criminal Court. They have destroyed the leader, Mr. Khan. He's now suspended on trumped up, if you'll forgive the pun, trumped up sexual harassment cases. He is now effectively a non-person. They have frozen his bank account. They have frozen his email account. He cannot open his iPhone or his Apple computer because he's been sanctioned and the companies have complied with it. This is the most senior figure in international law. So the truth is, there never was a rules-based international order. as I argued, I think powerfully, at the Hay on Wye festival a few years back. I never seemed to be invited back to them, but it's on the internet. You can see it. I denounced this phrase, rules-based international order. It was nothing more than the rules that the most powerful dictated to the rest of the international order. It was American orders dictated to the global community. So, can anything be done? I doubt it. As you just heard Glenn Greenwald say, even the Iraq War was not intended to go through the US Congress until the US Congress made clear to Bush and Cheney that they would vote for it. And as Glenn just said, the same is true now. As long as Israel has effectively captured the United States of America's political system, as it has effectively captured the political system in Britain and in France and in Germany, then nothing can be done. But you get the government you vote for, Mohammed, whether in the United States or in Europe. Thanks for the call. I can take your comments on YouTube. Scan the QR code now. Leave a comment on the YouTube stream. Like Joe Escobar says, this sneak attack on Iran is simply to distract from the Palestinian genocide. The Israelis will never receive forgiveness for their evil deeds. Never. And Zendia sends $2 Canadian. Thank you, Zendia. Says the Pakistani military has agreed to help the US against Iran. Well, that's breaking news for me and would be a miserable turn of events indeed, if true. James Hayden says, first, Tulsi should resign. Second, I voted for him 3 times, and before his 100 days were up, I knew then that he was a liar, bought and paid for by Netanyahu. I hope that impeachment is successful. I think there's millions of people think like you do, James. I have projected the dream team, not that politically they agree with me or I agree with them politically. I mean, I'd rather me and Jackson Hinkle ran for President of the United States of America. But given the prevailing orthodoxies and given the parameters and electability and fundability of today's presidential races, I believe that tulsigabbard should resign if Trump joins the war and should make plain that she intends to run for president. And I've suggested, with all respect to other contenders, that Tucker-Carlson would be the ideal running mate. Tulsi Gabbard, Tucker-Carlson, President and Vice President of the United States of America. I think that would be quite a big step forward. I don't know about you. Lucy 2021 says Israel hanged British soldiers and supported Argentina in the Falklands. It's a myth that they are an ally. Well, not so much an ally as our controlling hand. Phoenix 2040 says Arabs' only interest is to protect their money. That's why they have mercenaries in their countries, America, British, and so on. Abdullah is in London on these subjects. He's up next. Go ahead, Abdullah.
Very, very, interesting to be on your show. It is unfortunate, George, it's very unfortunate for this kind of leaders to be in this place. Those who are thinking to end our civilization. Those who are thinking to attack, even if it is a nuclear place, to bombard and try to destabilize the existence of our world. It's very great shame. We should condemn, we should do studies on this and think how we can remove, whether it is locally, nationally, or internationally, this kind of people who are a threat to the existence of human being. We can see their mentality, what they have done in Gaza.
Amen. Yeah. We've watched for 20 months in real time. We've watched a Holocaust taking place, supported by the British Labour government, almost unbelievably, supported by the British Labour Prime Minister Keir Starmer. And you do have a chance to do something about it, Abdullah. And I'm speaking in London on the 28th of June in the Bolivar Hall in central London to launch our election campaign for the local elections next May. And given the international situation, we're having to turn that into not just a campaign launch, but an anti-war rally, because frankly, from top to bottom, from town hall to the very top of the tree, Britain is controlled by the supporters of Israel, and we have to break it. You have to vote for people who will break it. And I hope that means you'll vote for me and my candidates. 28th of June, Bolivar Hall. I think we may have a poster for it coming up later in the show. Thank you, Abdullah. A big thanks to this week's top donors who visited the MOATS.tv website. Kerry Pay, Stephen Hay, James Glass, Ricardo Salavesa, and John Sullivan. Thank you all for your generous support. It's been a huge week for MOATS. I'm sure you have got by now the need to keep us on the air 2 nights a week and not to lose the midweek show. So please become a MOATS donor tonight. MOATS.tv. Or you can support me on patreon.com/George Galloway. That all goes to support the show too. Let's take one more call before the break. Kourosh is in Glasgow, wants to talk about Iran. Go ahead, Kourosh.
Hello. Hi, Mr. George. First,
hi.
And I am really amazed by your truthness. Thank you for the opportunity. I would like to say a few things if you don't mind. First of all, I was going to say, like, as an Iranian from Iran, we don't want anyone else from any other country come and change our regime. That's not any other people's business. And if anyone else wants to come and give other country freedom, that's lie. If they wanted to give us freedom, they wouldn't attack like this. That I want to mention that Donald Trump is like quite crazy that he's going everywhere, wants to change the name of Mexican Gulf, Canada to U.S. and stuff. First of all, and then can you hear me, Mr. George?
I can hear you well, and they've published a plan today, Kourosh, for the partition of Iran. They are openly intending to break up Iran into smaller countries based on ethnicity. An Arab state in Iran, an Azeri state in Iran. They are intending to make Iran the Balkans, broken and weak, the better to dominate it and to suck its wealth forevermore. Last word to you, Kourosh.
Just can I mention something else, Mr. George, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Mr. George, I wanted to say, they are saying that Iran's government is crazy, this and that. That's our business, as I said. Secondly, that the guy they have put in charge in Syria, that's the same guy Donald Trump bet on him 10 million as a terrorist leader. So they use him as now as their guy to, you know, on the ground, so they have power like to do these criminals that I have never seen entire my life that anybody have no mercy than executing people in the queue for the food and water. That's a shame of humanity. And last thing, sorry to talk too much, last thing is Israel and Iran signed together for the nuclear. That was before Iranian revolution of Islamic revolution. That was before that. They signed both for this. And they made the position of having it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's a good point you make. I don't know why I forgot to make it. The nuclear ambitions of Iran began under the Shah of Persia, Pahlavi. And in fact, the American nuclear engineering company Westinghouse had already begun working on a peaceful nuclear industry in Iran under the Shah. The Americans were going to build it. And it's good that you jogged my memory on that. Every country in the world has the right to peaceful nuclear power. But they must sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty. They must agree to inspection by the IAEA, whose head said on Sky News this evening they have no evidence that Iran was seeking to use its enriched uranium from that program to build a nuclear bomb. Thanks, Korosh. Let me take a quick break, and then it is the one and only Lowkey coming up after the break. Stay tuned.
The 1897 edition of War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. Read by George Galloway. Available only on Patreon.
The cylinder was artificial, hollow, with an end that screwed out. Something within the cylinder was unscrewing the top. Good heavens, said Ogilvy. There's a man in it, men in it, half roasted to death, trying to escape. At once, with a quick mental leap, he linked the thing with the flash on Mars. The thought of the confined creature was so dreadful to him that he forgot the heat and went forward to the cylinder to help turn. But luckily, the dull radiation arrested him before he could burn his hands on the still glowing metal.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Now, I hope you will support me on patreon.com/George Galloway. You get original material like that. You get a chat with me whenever I can get on the chat. I was on it in the early evening, late afternoon this very day. And you can be sure that your financial support, which is a cup of tea per week, it's the equivalent of a cup of tea in an insalubrious cafe every week, to support me on Patreon. I hope you'll do it. Patreon.com/George Galloway. Who's winning, Israel or Iran? 58,000 people have now voted in this poll, getting close to a second consecutive record poll. 10% on Telegram say Israel, 27% on X say Israel, 18% on the community poll, and 18% on the stream say Israel. Now, the poet, professor of the streets, Lowkey, renowned hip-hop artist, host of the Watchdog podcast, and political campaigner extraordinaire, joins us now. Lowkey, I'm very glad that you came on the show. I watched earlier the latest little short film that you made on Double Down News, I think, which made pretty miserable reading. And I know that neither you nor I wish to gratuitously cause division amongst the Arabs. Heaven knows there's enough division between them already. But when you see in your film the sheer extent of the treachery, treason by so many of the Arab rulers, and not just Arab, Muslim rulers, Turkey and others. It is difficult not to howl at the moon, frankly. That's what I felt like doing when I saw your piece. I wanted to howl in rage. Just give us the small version of it.
Well, it's well known that Jordan has been intercepting missiles from Iran over its airspace in order that they do not get anywhere near Israel. It's known that Jordan, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia formed a land bridge to circumvent the blockade of the Yemeni armed forces of the Israeli port of Eilat, which was subsequently bankrupt. It's also known that Egypt has collaborated with the blockade of Gaza since me and you entered Gaza, George. You will remember the experience we went through on the Egyptian side there for several days. And of course, what else Egypt has done is in the early days of the genocide, Ibrahim Arjani, a businessman very close to Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, was essentially extorting the population of Gaza and charging them ridiculous amounts of money, making millions of dollars every day in extortion money to get them out of the Gaza Strip away from the genocide. But it really doesn't stop there. That is literally just scratching the surface. When you look on the more economic side of what has been built, especially post the Abraham Accords, you have literally the airspace above Palestine managed by an Israeli company called Highlander. Now, that company is partly owned by the UAE state. The UAE has a state-owned arms company called Edge Group, which is a part owner of Highlander Aviation. In addition to that, the company by the name of Third Eye Systems, it's again an Israeli intelligence company, has an AI system called the Ghost Soldier, which essentially Israeli military forces send out before they make an incursion in Gaza to better protect themselves from what will happen. Now, that company is 30% owned by Edge Group, the UAE state-owned company. And there's loads of other examples. You could look at, for example, the Jared Kushner-founded Affinity Partners, which was founded with money from the Saudi government, $2 billion from the Saudi government. Kushner took that money and invested it directly into something called the Shlomo Group. Now, the Shlomo Group is the largest shipbuilding company in Israel. It builds almost all of the Israeli Navy. In addition to that, the Shlomo Group equipped the Shaudag unit of the Israeli military, which carried out the El Shifa hospital raid, which killed many people and led to doctors being abducted for very long periods of time, and one even being killed, raped to death, in fact, in Sidi Tayman, the well-known Israeli prison camp. On top of that, the organization, the Affinity Partners, which is backed not only by the Saudis, but also Qatari money, UAE money as well. This organization is partly an owner of Phoenix Holdings, another Israeli company, which is one of the top shareholders in Elbit Systems. That's Israel's largest arms company, 2 million shares in Elbit Systems. And really, it doesn't stop there. When you look at the Turkish example, you have someone by the name of Ahmed Zorlu, who's a close friend of Erdogan. Now, Zorlu was 25% shareholder, one of the largest shareholders in an Israeli company called Dorad Energy. Dorad Energy provides Israeli military bases with electricity. It is a known fact that Turkey has for decades been training Israeli pilots in the Konya Air Base. In addition to that, you of course have the example of Erdogan's son, who has long been accused of trading with Israel, but actually a Turkish journalist by the name of Metin Cihan pointed out, according to figures from the Turkish, the Istanbul Chamber of Commerce, that a shipping company belonging to Erdogan's son, Burak Erdogan, was trading with Israel throughout the genocide. And there are many, many more examples of the way in which the political and economic elites of the region are tied in and integrated really with a lot of the Israeli military infrastructure, actually. And so, George, when it comes to the point of the attack on Iran, you have the Site K base in Turkey, the radar base, which is alleged to have been used in detecting some of the Iranian rockets that have shot towards the Zionist entity and helped block it. And so really, unfortunately, this is a regional issue whereby the political and business elites do not represent the people that they rule. And now, with the case of Iran, the clarity that is developing among people will eventually not reflect very well on these people. And history will certainly not be kind to them. As you know, George, when you broke the siege of Gaza twice, not once, but twice, at great risk to your physical and political life, this was something that in years later, history has smiled upon. Because to make that leap of faith and carry that out with groups of people from around the world, it took great bravery. And when I look back, for example, on what we saw in Gaza and the people we met in Gaza for the short time we were there, it breaks my heart to think that not only does that place no longer exist, but I'm sure many of those people, those faces that we saw, the children that we saw greeting you as you came into Gaza and we came with you, they no longer exist. And the crime that has been committed here really will echo and reverberate across the centuries, actually. Netanyahu is really one of the great killers of human history. And also now we have a battle for the soul of Donald Trump, George. And as you know, much of his base are deeply opposed to getting involved in wars. They're not the neocons, but he's being pushed into this war by the very same people that caused the Iraq war. Who do you think is in the leadership of the United Against the Nuclear Iran organization? None other than Jeb Bush, the brother of George Bush. Who else do you think is in the leadership of that organization? Mark Wallace, who was a US rep at the United Nations at the time of the Iraq war. Who else is on the advisory board of United Against the Nuclear Iran? None other than Mir Dagan, who was the head of Israel's external intelligence agency, Mossad, at the time of the Iraq invasion. These are the people that brought us that horrific war which killed over 1 million people. Now Donald Trump is in a battle for his soul. Does he take the position that Israel wants him to take and paralyze the global economy when the Strait of Hormuz gets shut down, when Bab el-Mandeb in the Red Sea gets shut down, when the oil platforms in the region are shut down? Or does he go even further, which it seems his ambassador in Israel, Mike Huckabee, is pushing him to do, which is use a nuclear weapon and go down as one of the most evil individuals in human history? Or does he take the other position, which is to allow Israel to sleep in the bed that it has made for itself, the river of blood that it has built in the region, and really understand what has happened across these last decades? Which will Donald Trump do? To be honest, I think your guess will be more informed than mine on this topic.
Well, given all of that, how sincerely can you take the pronouncements from Erdogan through the royals of Saudi Arabia, even King Abdullah of Jordan? They have all denounced Israel's illegal attack, sneak attack on Iran, and warned of great destabilization to come. Are they secretly collaborating with the Israeli attack and with the American attack, which we'll know, I think, tomorrow or the next day, whether or not it comes? But it seems unlikely, given the chart that you've just drawn for us of their perfidy, that they are telling the truth when they say they're against Israel's attack on Iran.
Well, as you know, George, political pronouncements are generally perception management. What really counts is the infrastructure. As you'll remember with the Iraq War, you had numerous states in the region who were publicly against the Iraq War. However, when it was time for US troops to enter the country, from where did they come? They came from those bases in those countries. Saudi Arabia, as of today, has gathering on it US bombers on its military bases there. We know what they're there for. They are there to try and quell Iran's move, really, to represent the entirety of humanity. With Iran's defense of the Palestinian people, which even precedes the Islamic Revolution. What do I mean by that? When Khomeini and his followers were gathering for the Islamic Revolution and training in Lebanon, they were trained by none other than Khalil Wazir, who went on to be known as Abu Jihad, the head of intelligence for Yasser Arafat's Fatah. And since the Islamic Revolution, the Iranian government took at great cost to itself every single measure it could take to support the Palestinian factions, all of them, across the board. Whether you ask Talal Naji of the PFLP, he tells you the same thing. You ask Ziad Nakhala of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, he said very clearly, Iran has given billions to the Palestinian factions. Saleh al-Aruri of Hamas said exactly the same thing. Iran is the only state in the world that has a yearly budget for the liberation of Palestine. And now the clarity has been established. Iran has not spent 50 years on vanity projects like other governments in the region. It has not spent 50 years trying to build up its reputation as a fashionable and trendy tourism destination, despite the fact it has great rich civilization worthy of all form of tourism. Iran has spent 50 years preparing for this battle. That is what has befuddled the Israelis and the Americans to such an extent. They cannot conceive of how this group of people have poured the brilliance of multiple generations of their society into developing not only ways to help humanity through stem cell research and other things, but also into AI and also into developing independent military capabilities. Not like the rest of the region, where their tanks cannot move an inch without US instructors, not like the rest of the region who buy planes that they cannot operate. Iran has independently, self-sufficiently built its own military capabilities, which Israel is going to feel night after night in a war of attrition.
I sense, and I think you also alluded to it, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this particular episode, as opposed to the earlier so-called revolution in Syria, has brought Muslim public opinion together more than any time that I've known it. As you know, this whole question is bedeviled by sectarian hatred with extremists who care far more about how other Muslims pray than they do about the massacre of Palestinian children in Gaza. And they're not prepared to unite with someone who prays differently to them. But this particular moment feels to me like one that is uniting overwhelmingly most of the 2 billion Muslims in the world. Do you see it that way?
The simple fact is this, George. Billions of people across the world, including Muslims, have been sickened to their stomach and pained and cried themselves to sleep over images of Gaza. In the act of striking back at the Zionist entity in the way it has, Iran has assumed leadership of the Islamic civilization, but not just that. It's assumed leadership of the whole world. Iran is the forefront in the battle for civilization against savagery, against the normalization of killing children on an industrial scale day after day. Iran has taken that step. And the simple fact is this: you can no longer lie to people through the channels, the media channels, and through the scholars that are sponsored by particular states. People know the truth. And that has now been established off the back of this. So I hope you are right, and I hope people wake up from their long slumber.
Well, thank you for joining us. You've played a very significant role in lifting that consciousness to the level it is today, and it is indeed high. Although with Piers Morgan this week, I got another taste of the extent to which the establishment simply do not regard the great majority of humanity as being on any kind of plane with themselves. So when I say that the global majority is behind Iran, the answer to that is, yeah, but they're in Africa and Asia and Latin America, and they are in the global south, in the global east, they're in China and Russia. It's very clear that for people like Morgan, the golden billion, as they call the West, 1 billion out of 8 billion, are the only people who really count, even though there are hundreds of millions of people within the golden billion who are also supporting Iran against Israel in this conflict.
Absolutely, George. And the 20 fastest growing economies in the world, none of them are European. Several of them are former British colonies. Britain is projected to fall to the 11th largest economy in the world. The United States is scheduled to fall to the second, if not the third largest economy in the world. The future does not belong to these people. And in fact, the development of Britain, its industrialization on the back of deindustrializing and de-developing the rest of the world, of using it as captive labor and captive resources, was actually the aberration of human history. For a long, long time, before the establishment of the East India Company, India and China made up a large section of the global economy. We are now returning to a more natural economic equilibrium in this world. And I think for characters like Piers Morgan and others, it's going to be a real shock to the system, George.
Yeah, I'm rereading Dalrymple's epic book, The Anarchy, the history of the East India Company. And when the English arrived, they were simply staggered. Their jaws dropped open at the wealth that they saw in places like Delhi and elsewhere, other great cities of the Indian subcontinent. Thank you, as always, Lowkey, for another brilliant tour of the horizon. Let's hope we have the chance to meet again and the world hasn't gone up in nuclear smoke. Let's take a quick break, then it's your calls next, right up to Gayatri's social media news roundup. Stay tuned. Well, first of all, Bob Geldof and his good friend Bono are on the other side. It wasn't for South Africa, it was for the Horn of Africa. I was involved in it at the time. That was my job at the time. And there were many differences. First of all, it was easy because of Cold War politics to take a stand on the famine in sub-Saharan Africa in 1984-85. I did so myself, but it was easy to do. There was no Ethiopian lobby smearing you as an anti-Ethiopian racist if you got involved in it. There was absolutely gale-force wind of free publicity from the newspapers and the television about the famine in Africa at that time. There is zero publicity in the mainstream media about the calvary being undergone by the Palestinian people in 2024. Thirdly, the artists involved lost nothing and arguably gained much by being involved in that charitable enterprise. Artists today lining up for Palestine, like the great Eric Clapton, like the great Roger Waters, and I'm running out of names already, would not only not be benefiting from putting on a Live Aid for Palestine, their careers would be destroyed, would be brought to a shuddering halt if they did. So I'm afraid none of the conditions which made possible the Live Aid phenomenon exist over Palestine. Indeed, quite the contrary.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
So it's a MOATS record poll. 63,239 people have voted so far. Who's winning, Israel or Iran? You've got about 10 minutes, 12 minutes left to cast your vote. But we've beaten the poll on Sunday by 1,200 votes already. I'm told that the switchboard is melting and that there's a record number of calls. And so I'm told by my editor to rattle through the calls as quickly as possible. So let's go first to Morris in California on Iran and the US. Go ahead, Morris.
Yeah, hello. Good afternoon to everyone within the sound of my voice. The Prime Minister for Israel and the President of the United States, Donald Trump, they belong in prison. They do not belong in power. And AIPAC is decimating our public officials here in the United States of America. We have an NBA basketball player. His name is Dwight Howard. He simply tweeted out, "Free Palestine." 10 minutes later, he got a call from the NBA commissioner. Okay, BRICS is for real, George. That de-dollarization program that's taking place, it really is very, very effective. They're taking over the world commerce, and America is in serious, serious decline. We do not want the Iranians to shut down the Strait of Hormuz. If they do, everybody had better have an electric car. And one thing about the West, they're suffering from a mineral shortage. They're going to have to be humbled. Praise God for the Chinese that agreed to give America some minerals long enough to keep their production going for cars. But the West is going to have to get humble of what they were doing in Africa, for example. Because of the AES, they can't do that anymore. There's a new sheriff in town, George, and Iran is nothing to play with. Those guys are 5,000 years old. They know something we don't know. I hope I didn't take too much time, and have a good day, George.
You didn't. You were actually as rapid and succinct as any call I could wish for, and also as erudite. Absolutely brilliant, Morris in California. Mo Berenji says, George, as an Iranian, I can't thank you enough for spreading the truth. Thank you very much on behalf of all my Persian brothers and sisters. Thank you, Mo. And Anthony Wedgwood says, what a disgraceful display by Morgan towards Gigi and Professor Marandi this week. You only have to read the comments to know people are only viewing to see the aforementioned ruin, Piers Moron. And Rupert199 says, sir, I tip my hat to you for proving to be the better man after witnessing Piers Morgan's tirade on how his show is bigger. Let's change that, shall we? Absolutely, Rupert. And I'm wondering if this week, at least, our show is in fact bigger than his. He boasted they've got 4 million subscribers. Well, 7.22 million watched MOATS in the last week, and none of them were watching to see me slaughtered by a guest, I think. Mahmoud Salama says, thank you for giving an absolute hard lesson to Piers Funking Morgan. Tomus1B says, I unsubscribed from Piers Morgan and subscribe to George Galloway. Thank you for that. I'm boycotting Piers Morgan from now on. Evan is in Toronto in Canada on Piers Morgan. Go ahead, Evan.
Yeah, George, I want to join the chorus in congratulating you for your masterful takedown of Piers Morgan. You did, as you would put it, you really gave him a bloody good hiding. as you said about Iran.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, it's funny. People like Pierce, they like to brag that they were against the Iraq war, but then it comes up Syria, Iran. Sure, no problem. Let's have a war with them. Let's have a regime change.
Sure. He's supported every war since. And he's supporting the people that brought us the Iraq war. It's the same politicians, the same leader writers, the same broadcasters that are bringing us the Iran war as brought us the Iraq war that he opposed.
Yeah, it's crazy. And, you know, here in Canada, we weren't technically part of the Iraq war. But now, you know, I live across the street from the office of the foreign minister here. And she condemns Iran's reprisal, but not Israel for starting the war. So there's going to be a protest against her tomorrow, and I hope a lot of people attend that.
I hope so too, Evan. Thank you for your kind words. Big shout out to tonight's top donors who've been on the MOATS.tv website since we came on air. Dennis Freeman, Po Tham, Yusuf Aslam, Tony Dillon, and Ms. C.E. McDermott. You have been so generous. I'm very grateful to you. Please check out the MOATS.tv website before you go to bed this evening and leave at least $1, €1, or £1. Dr. Okua is in England, in Doncaster, on these same subjects. Go ahead, Doctor.
Good evening, Mr. Great Coast man, George Galloway.
Thank you. Thank you.
You are the great man. All Africa, you know, you're a very great man. I'm from Equatorial Guinea, ruled by a dictator for more than 50 years, who Tony Blair, all American Zionists do the big business. So I call you to say thank you very much, because in the West society, deception it come like the day break in the West society. When Eric Kissinger in 1960-70, a capture America system, a capture United Kingdom, France, Germany, all West society, it destroyed honest politicians. From that day, press, you can see television, radio, newspaper, all of them liars. All of them liars. That's why you see China and Russia.
Since the Reagan-Thatcher era, everything, including the quality of politicians, has gone downhill fast and far. Doc, thanks for that call in Doncaster. Wasn't a great line, but it was a great call. Salim is in the Czech Republic on Piers Morgan. Salim, go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Galloway. I really want to thank you for whatever you are doing. And I was quite surprised to see Piers Morgan talking about how many subscribers he had and everything. And actually, there was something more shocking for me. The way he was talking to the former Israeli prime minister or MP or whatever, and the moment his own country's former elected MP came, the way he became hostile, that was stunning for me. Yeah. And I do want you to please look at the comment section. Mr. Galloway, I know you're a busy person. You have many more things to do. But just look at the comment section of that and see how people were telling him truly, why do we come here? We come for the moments when Mr. Galloway comes here, or people like Mehdi Hassan or Muhammad Hijab or Lowkey come here and smash your propagandist matrix media. So I don't know in which diluted...
Beautifully put, Salim. I don't have the time to look at comments, but by the grace of God, I have a lot of children. And the older children, at least, sometimes read these comments for me. But we're so extraordinarily busy right at this point. I'll just take your word for that, and I'm very grateful for it. He's a schoolyard bully, Piers Morgan. And he does have a big show, but then he has a big and plush and very well appointed studio. And he has a big and very well paid staff. He has a very big budget. He's an extremely wealthy man. And the combination of all of that does give you a certain head start. We, on the other hand, are a mom and pop business. There's just me and Gayatri. And the people who told me the phones are melting are my own grandchildren who are answering the phones for nothing. This is an unpaid gig I'm doing and do twice a week. Nobody pays me one brass farthing to make this show, to present this show. I'm not sure that Piers Morgan would tell you how much he makes. Jim in Wigan in England wants to talk about the US madness. Go ahead, Jim.
Hello, George. Thank you very much. I follow your show all the time. I try every single evening to listen to you. Thank you very much. I'm actually originally from DRC, Congo. When I see you, I see Lumumba, I see Sankara, I see Ibrahim Traore, and it revolutionized me. I hear you talking of UN inspector. They are not UN inspector. They are UN West spies. They spied to occasion what happened. So when you are encouraging this is really wrong. Before I go to my point, I want to mention that for me, Piers Morgan is just a mole. When somebody is used to go underground, he wanted to teach everybody that walking in the darkness is the best way of walking. But that is not. So my point is this, George. We are taught Holocaust. I'm from DRC Congo. I can't take time to think of any Holocaust than 12 million killed by Leopold. Nobody talked about it.
Yep.
And this is, I'm quoting...
half the population.
Yes, I am quoting Samuel Jackson as the greatest Holocaust that has ever existed. How can you teach to a Congolese to acknowledge Jew Holocaust while we in Congo, we had one and no one in Europe apart from Roger Kesman report that disclosed it before it was stopped. I'm coming back.
Well, and not just, there are very few, but E.D. Morel, the former member of parliament from my home city of Dundee, was one of the great vindicators of freedom in the Congo, and others, but not too many others, drew attention to the mass slaughter of 12 million people in the Congo by a European king who personally owned the entire country of the Congo. Only later did it become a Belgian government colony and then continued just as bloodily to wring every last ounce of wealth, blood and tears from the people of the Congo. The fact that the Congo genocide is unacknowledged is not, of course, a reason for withdrawing acknowledgement of the Holocaust inflicted by Hitler fascism, by European Christian fascists against Jews right across the occupied Europe, and which would have continued until there was no Jew left alive, if not for the Soviet Red Army and their victory in Berlin. So I'm with you. It is a scandal of unimaginable proportions that the Congo is still being invaded, still being leached, still being exploited, and its 12 million martyrs of colonialism still completely unknown, untaught, by Western schools and Western universities, very largely. So I'm with you, Jim, on that. And for you to compare me to Lumumba, one of my greatest heroes, and Sankara and Traore, is deeply humbling. I'm unworthy of such comparison, but I have never forgotten that my leader, Comandante Che Guevara, himself went to the Congo and took up arms and fought to defend the government of Patrice Lumumba. I hope later this year to give a lecture at the Patrice Lumumba University for International Friendship in Moscow. It's one of my unfulfilled ambitions. Jim, God bless you and thank you for that call. Robert is in Jamaica. Let's go to Jamaica to talk about Iran, Palestine, and the US. This is the Global University of the airwaves. Go ahead, Robert.
Thank you very much, George. Once again, congratulations on your university. It's brilliant. I'm following up on your great conversation with Lowkey, who's so extremely knowledgeable. Just want to make my observation. If you might remember, a couple of weeks ago, I was on there saying that Donald Trump would fail with the Ukraine peace initiative process because it's the Zionists who are behind this war, and they're not going to allow the peace there because they need the overthrow of Iran and they want the overthrow of Russia. Then they control the oil of the world. The other thing is, I don't know if my observation in the last week, I have seen the whole demeanor of Donald Trump change. He looks like a caged,
me too.
Caged person. I didn't want to use the word that might be misconstrued. I do not think that he wants war, not merely because of his, from a moral perspective, just that he's not interested in that. He loves to make money, make deals, whatever. So I don't think he's for war. But he's being played by the people around him who are all told, he was given who to put up by his funders, as you know, Mr. Sheldon, etc., and they made commitments for Israel. And although he doesn't want to go to war, he's been backed into war like many of the previous presidents. So to me, he looks like a caged animal. Sorry, I didn't mean it in that sense, but you know when you cage something, he's not an animal naturally, but he looks caged.
You're absolutely right to highlight the change in his demeanor and the entire change in his body language and his persona, almost. I don't myself believe, Robert, it's about Adelson's $100 million. I mean, Elon Musk gave him $300 million. And as we say in Ireland, eaten bread is soon forgotten. He long ago ate that $100 million and the $300 million, and it didn't do Elon Musk much good in the medium run. So I don't believe it's about money. And I don't believe, despite the talk, that he's going to try and run again and change the constitution and so on. So he no longer needs campaign donations. He needs the Arabs, frankly, much more than he needs the Israelis. Far, far, far more for his family's financial future as a billionaire, multi-billionaire family. My good friend Max Blumenthal thinks that Donald Trump is scared, and something has scared him. And I rather think that's a more productive seam to explore. Is this about Epstein? Have they told him what they've got in the haul of videos from Epstein? Is that what it is? What are you scared of, Donald? You cannot destroy humanity because somebody's blackmailing you. Surely you wouldn't do that. Actually, the very point I've just made, Friendly Brilliant says, Max Blumenthal thinks Trump is scared. I wonder if it's money or if they're threatening his family's lives. He needs to step down if that's true. And Jeffrey R86 says Trump's spooked by Epstein accusations from Elon Musk, and he's made a full 180. The harpsichord of Mozart, what a wonderful name, says the assassination attempts turned Trump nuts. And Pacos Raja says polls should be corrected. United States versus Iran. And the Elisma show says, I'm disappointed in Trump. I voted for him, but not to support Israel's crimes in Palestine and now Iran. Let's go to Juan in Nanaimo. Forgive me, Juan, where is Nanaimo?
Nanaimo is a city on Vancouver Island, and Vancouver Island is in front of Vancouver City in the Strait of Georgia on British Columbia, Canada.
Excellent. I've been on that island. Go ahead.
So, first of all, George, I'm not a religious person, but I will say it anyway. God bless you. God bless you. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you, I'm calling this island is on unceded territory from the native people of Canada. Okay, so I have one comment and one question. Comment first. Since Friday, I have cried many, many times. I even have a knot in my throat right now by saying it. I have cried not out of sadness. I have cried not out of anger, but instead I have cried out of catharsis, because for the first time in history, finally, a great power stands up to provide justice to the people, to the martyrs and the children of Palestine, of Lebanon, of Syria, of Yemen. I have my own podcast in Spanish.
Well, that's very powerfully put, and I don't think you're alone in that, Juan. It's beyond the comprehension of those who sit in our establishment television studios. It's beyond the comprehension of the people who sit in our parliaments in our respective countries, but the vast majority of the people of the world are happy that Israel is getting a bloody good hiding 4 nights. I saw an Israeli today complaining about Iran destroying a technical college attached to the Israeli nuclear facility. Israel destroyed every single school, college, and university in Gaza, and they were all cheering this destruction. They destroyed every school and university in the country, and I saw an Israeli making out that it was some kind of war crime that an Iranian rocket had damaged an Israeli technical college. Last word to you, Juan.
So I have my own podcast in Spanish, and I have told my own audience, do not show any sympathy. Don't dare to show any sympathy to Israel, because the only way to kill evil in this planet is to burn the jungle down. I had a question, but I'm going to leave it there, George. Have a nice day. God bless you.
Yeah, leave
again,
it there,
my
Juan,
friend.
and I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful to you for that because of the hour. Now, I told you I'm speaking in central London on the 28th with my good friend and colleague, my deputy leader, Chris Williamson, former parliamentary colleague of mine. There's me and Chris in the foreground, and I think it's Trump and Netanyahu in the background. Stop World War III, Rally for Peace, Saturday, 28th of June, Rally of the Workers' Party. Get your tickets quick because the hall cannot accommodate more than a few hundreds. Let's go to line 2, Dr. Hannah in London on Trump, Iran, Israel. Go ahead, Doctor. Doc, are you there?
Yes, hello.
Doctor?
Good evening. Thank you. I'm Dr. Hannah Khan, yes, from London.
Marvelous. Go ahead. Go ahead, Doctor.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving me time to talk, George. And I've been listening to you for a very long time. And it's not only me. We have a bioethics doctors society, as I'm a fellow of a Doctors Royal College. And through that, it's the voice of all my colleague doctors from various ethnic backgrounds, it's Christian, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, everybody, and with no faith as well, that and since 30 years as I've been working, I've seen the same color of blood and just giving the same sound, no matter from which ethnic group. So we have sent a tweet to Mr. Donald Trump this morning when he said just surrender to Iran, just surrender, no other choice. That it hurts because as interfaith groups we follow the divine revelation saying, and especially Quran, that come to the common points among yourselves, use wisdom, get together to all the goodness for the whole humanity. So we expect that when U.S. claims that most civilized superpower, of course, as well, then claiming for bringing peace to the earth, why it happens that after every few years, the U.S. leader comes forward and has given has been dedicated to some sort of destruction in some part of the world. Secondly, that as we say, for our fetuses, one of our colleagues from Iran, it was a Baha'i sister, she showed us on a projector that a fetus in the mother's womb thinks that why have I bungee jumping on my cord, so happy, why do I need these dangling things, fingers and toes? I don't need them. I'm very happy with mama. And so she hears the voice of the creator that you will need it in the life after birth. And then in the life after birth, he soon realizes that he needs this for very important work. Same is about, it's not, lucky somebody will be going up to 100, most will perhaps have 78 years of us. And then we tell our patients who are depression or elderly, we have another life. We'll be young again. We are going back to zero. We are not going to end. So there we will need these dangling fingers and toes which are taking care of each other, looking after, not cutting away the human beings as weeds and grass, rather living in the thorns as flowers. So those people will be selected and then implanted in a new garden and not thrown into the black holes. So we requested in that tweet that please, the leaders and people who commit to bring peace to the earth, please stay by your words. And this is not the way which is being done. I'm not just, when we go to these protests in Palestine,
we all have to face yes. Thank you, Doctor, for that beautiful and very poetic and poignant call. We all have to face a judgment day. And I'm confident that God is not hoping for a nuclear bomb to be dropped on Iran by Donald Trump over the weekend. I'm very confident about that. I ask myself, before any significant action, what would the Lord want me to do about this? Donald Trump is clearly not thinking straight if he thinks that the divine would like him to be the second president in history to drop nuclear weapons on another country, and for no good reason. And for those who say, well, he probably won't drop nuclear weapons, let me point this out. If you bomb a nuclear reactor, you have dropped a nuclear bomb. If you destroy a nuclear reactor, you explode it into the atmosphere, and all of its particulars will infect humanity for an unimaginable amount of time and an unimaginable amount of space. So one way or another, Trump is talking about threatening a nuclear attack on Iran, either with his own nuclear weapons or with the impact on the nuclear power plants of conventional weapons. Doctor, there's only one person who could tear me away from talking with you on these subjects. My good wife, Gayatri, is here with the social media news roundup. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Well, just to follow up on the call, let's not forget that Senator Tedcruz on the Tucker-Carlson show said that those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. This is their actual belief and fundamental.
Although Tucker said to him, "Where's that from?"
Yeah, exactly.
He couldn't say.
I'm a Christian too. I need to know. I need to find it in the Bible.
He had no idea where this was in the Bible.
Poor Senator Cruz, he was completely crushed by Tucker
I think
Carlson.
it ended his 2028 presidential run.
Yes.
Tucker Carlson is the dog's bollocks of broadcasters, I must say.
So whether Trump is going delusional or not, can I remind you of General Wesley Clark, who listed 7 countries, starting with Iraq. He was told by the Bush administration right on the back of 9/11 that 7 Muslim majority countries would be attacked, starting with Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Somalia, Sudan, and then Iran. And here we are.
Iran's the last one standing, but will it still be standing? I predict yes. Go ahead.
Well, I looked at the list and I thought, but where's Afghanistan? Because Afghanistan was so attacked that the irony is that they were left after 20 years, billions of obviously taxpayers' money.
A trillion.
A trillion.
4 presidents,
dead.
1 trillion, 1 million dead to put the Taliban back in power.
Yeah, so if you ever feel useless, just remember that. So on that point, Scott asks, hello George, can you clarify the relation between the Taliban and Iran? I was wondering if the USA may have left that billions of high-tech weaponry so that when the war with Iran came round, they would attack from Afghanistan.
Yeah, I mean, it's a plausible speculation, but as I understand it, the Taliban are standing foursquare with Iran in this conflict, because this conflict is about Palestine. It's not about the nature of the Iranian regime or the relationship of Afghanistan to Iran. It's about whether or not we stand up to Netanyahu's genocide, Israel's genocide. And I think there's only one way the Taliban can go on that one.
Yeah, so who is winning, Israel or Iran? We're asking in the poll this week. Dr. Dream says, as is the practice, Israel is covering up its humiliating defeat. The problem is Iran is fighting Israel and the US and the other cowardly European countries who are helping behind the scenes. So that's the unfair situation playing out. Now, on the point of Israel covering up their humiliating defeat, I just went online to the Haaretz and compared it to Press TV, just to random landing pages, one from Israel, one from Iran. And it's true, if you look at the Haaretz landing page, the first news is actually analysis. It goes in depth. It's an editorial piece rather than breaking news. Whereas if you go to Press TV, it goes into newsroom items, the true promise, the third phase of it, and how Iran is pounding strategic targets in Tel Aviv. Well, we don't read about that in the Israeli newspapers.
No. We don't read about it here. But I just saw from your landing page there.
Yeah, which one?
About that it's. This is in the Israeli press.
Oh, here. This is the Israeli one.
I beg your pardon. I was looking at the Iranian one.
Yes,
I'm interested in this new generation missile that must have landed by now.
Yeah, well.
I saw it take off. I'm wondering whether its properties are very close to the Oreshnik, the Russian super weapon. It's certainly hypersonic. and it went off at quite a hypersonic rate.
Yeah.
But of course, Israel will not allow journalists in Israel to report where it landed and what damage that it did. But I'm sure truth will out.
It will. Jonathan Wood says, Iran remains in the game, so they're ahead on points. All that is up for grabs is if or when the USA bails out of its proxy, and depending on what background support Russia and China can afford Iran. Hopefully they'll appreciate that Iran is one of their lines of defense.
Yeah, I think the insult to Trump, to Putin today from Trump, will definitely have increased the determination of the Russians to do what they can. Looking at that poll, Gayatri, it's now easily the biggest poll we've ever had on the mother of all talk shows. 66,220 people have voted, and 80% of them believe that Iran is winning. That's a very big poll, you know.
Well, as you reminded Piersmorgan, I mean, 7 billion people is a lot of people. 7 billion people who live outside of the Western world, and are therefore...
And a lot of the people inside the Western world.
Of course, yes.
I mean...
outside the bubble.
The American polls are overwhelmingly hostile to America getting involved, including amongst Republican voters.
Oh, yes.
Including amongst blue-collar, working-class voters. Overwhelmingly. I mean, like 70-30. Against the US becoming involved. So Trump's taking a staggering risk. If he does this, he'll split his movement down the middle, and he'll lose the next election for his chosen successor, if he even gets to it.
That would be the end of the Trump dynasty. What a pity.
Nobody called Trump would ever win an election again. Is that what you want, Donald?
So what is he really afraid of? Let me finish with Graham Briggs White. He says, honorably, morally, culturally, Iran have thwarted the West. From 1979 onwards, they have shown their mettle. One of the two things is possible: the emergence of a multipolar world or annihilation in a thermonuclear catastrophe.
Yes, sober indeed. Now, your hat's off with 4 Fs. That's still going strong, I see. It's producing a fantastic amount of video. It's like a full-time job. I'm missing you.
It is. So please follow.
A terrific success, though. So if you haven't followed it yet on Twitter, hats off with 4 Fs. Go and do so now. Let me take one last call, Gayatri, before I take you for chips. Mohammed is in Switzerland, and he wants to thank me. I'm very grateful, Mohammed, but there's no need. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Hi, George. Thank you very much for allowing me to have my words. And what I was going through all those years of my life, always wars. And then I saw Piersmorgan being such a thug. Sorry that I'm so unpolite from your platform, which it is not good, appropriate for me to say such thing. But Piersmorgan, if you would like to learn a little bit of humanity, I would like to admit you in a college, in a school in Africa or Asia. There you learn what is the true meaning of humanity. And then, please, George, you are the legend. I admire your honesty, your righteousness on this face of earth to face evil followers and tell them the truth, what it means to live together in peace, in prosperity. There is no war is for humanity in life, in our let's say this chance that we have to live on earth. It is a test.
Yeah.
To do good.
God gave us this chance to live on this beautiful planet, and we are led by people who prefer to suck the blood of other people and to shed the blood of those who don't agree for their blood to be sucked. It's kind of you to thank me, but here I stand. I can do no other. I don't do what I do for popularity, although it's becoming increasingly popular. I certainly don't do it for profit, for I profit nothing at all. I do it because it's right. As Martin Luther King said in his final speech, supporting the striking bin workers in Atlanta, Georgia, the night before he was assassinated. And like Dr. King, and at the risk of making my wife uncomfortable, I fear death not one whit, certainly not a violent death. Were I to come to a violent death, it would be a glorious end for me. It would make my name larger. I've said all I have to say, though I'll keep on talking as long as I can. Everybody knows and can access everything that I've stood for, everything that I have said. And by the grace of God, I have 6 children and a young wife who will continue that work. I am very confident. So, in short, I'm not afraid of them. I'm afraid only of God. I'm afraid only of that judgment day as to where I shall spend eternity. I hope to spend it with my dear wife, still as my wife, forevermore. And if you want to send a cruise missile through my window right now, just give me 60 seconds to get Gayatri out and down the stairs before you do. That's all I ask. So it's been marvelous for me. I hope it was for you. 2 cracking shows in a row, cracking guests, and gigantic, simply gigantic, unprecedented audiences and call interaction. The number of calls we got tonight is the biggest we have ever had. The poll is the biggest we have ever had. It's been great. Come back on Sunday for the mother of all talk shows.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.